Welcome to Season 2 of TaleFeather. I've been moving deliberately, seeking the why. Why we leap, why we stay, and why we serve. This season, we go beyond hospitality and spirits and into the lives of those who orbit this world with passion and purpose. Stories meant to echo inside of you and out into your community. So let's get to flying. Hey, songbirds, welcome back to TaleFeather, Season 2, Episode 2, with one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Stephen Myers. We're going to get to Stephen in just a second. You've listened to TaleFeather Season 1, and you understand where we were. We were talking about the adjacency between hospitality industry and non-alcoholic products largely through the entire first season. Season 2, we're going to get into the whys of people. And what I found is that everybody has a really cool story on how we get to where we are. If you listen to episode 1 already, you understand the narrative points of view that we talked about with Craig. So with Stephen, we're going to talk about everything that he does. I call him the Switchblade because this guy he has touched so many different brands in the US that have just caught fire, and he's done amazing work, and he's always been very kind to me. He's always been an uplifting point of view and a fair point of view. He's a very fair person. So I want to get Stephen on the show, and I want to be able to let him tell his story to us. So without any further ado, Mr. Stephen Myers, everybody.
Nick Crutchfield, thank you for having me, and thank you for such a glowing introduction. Don't
You're
quite know
welcome.
what to say after that. But yeah, great to be here, and sort of looking forward to diving in and hopefully answering a few questions with you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Can you give the songbirds out there, the flock, if you will, can you please give them a brief bio? Like, what's your background?
Can probably tell by the accent. Born and raised in Australia.
Yeah.
Grew up in Sydney. Went through sort of the scholastic system into university, corporate, and we can do a little bit more of that later. But the long and short of it was, I realized that corporate wasn't for me, and decided that I had to go. Surprised a lot of people with that, except for my mother, who, when I told her, she went, "I always knew you were leaving." So I didn't know I was leaving till not so long ago. But part of it was I went from high school to university because I realized that if I did that gap year or I traveled, I didn't think I was coming home. And then I went from sort of 2 years of pretty hardcore corporate. I was part of British American Tobacco, so Wills and Rothmans had just merged to create, I think, the second biggest sort of tobacco company in the world. So that was about as corporate as it got. I was part of the accelerator program there, got seconded overseas, and then sort of, as I said, decided that it wasn't quite for me. But so I basically went high school, university, can't leave, not sure if I'm coming back, university into corporate, because if I leave again, I'm not sure if I'm coming back. So almost by default, I kind of tested a lot of waters. And then that was the beginning of 2003, and have been home to visit, but have not lived in Australia since then, essentially.
Wow. Okay, so you've been gone for a little over 20 years.
Yeah, sort of 4 continents and 20 odd years at this point.
Wow. I want to get into the 4 continents during this interview. One of the things that you just said sticks out to me. Your mom knew before you did, and it's crazy how that mother's intuition factors into so many people's lives, right? I remember the first time I came home, as many of you know, I'm very tattooed, and I remember one of my first tattoo and coming home, my mom already knew that I had it. Like, I hadn't been home in, like, I don't know, 3 weeks. I was surfing a lot at the time and going to school, and this is post high school, and I came home with this big wave sun thing on my arm, and she was like, "It's so pretty," and my dad was like, "Get that thing off your arm." So they always know, right? But I want to dive into your childhood a little bit, because I want to understand how you got to going into corporate. Like, was anybody in your family systematic? Was there a systems kind of upbringing?
Yeah, so my parents were country kids, born and raised,
Okay.
from working farms, that ended up meeting in Sydney. My father is an accountant, so was sort of very structured in that regard. My mother was and still is very, very free spirited, but knew what she had to do obligation wise. So they were great in that and they've always been such an amazing sort of safety net, sort of personally, emotionally, everything wise. So there was certainly a lot of structure, but there was also a lot of doing things and trying new things. There was no sort of real regimentation. Grew up either on a beach or on a farm, essentially. Tried all the sports, even through school. Sort of tried all the subjects. Was never that kid who knew what they wanted to be.
Right. So more like a generalist.
Yeah, or that's interesting. I'll try that. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little bit of ADHD buried in there somewhere.
Right.
But I've realized this over time. I am much better learning sort of through experiential experiences rather than academically, because I wasn't a great student.
Gotcha.
There was always something more interesting or something else to do. And so I learned by doing a lot more. And I think they probably realized that. So yeah, we did all the sports, we did all the things. Again, sort of through high school, they didn't sort of force me into certain subjects, but sort of said, okay, well, think about this. Why do you want to do that? Here's a potential logical progression that you may not have thought about because you are 15, or because you are sort of going into your final years of high school and you're not quite sure what you want to do. And so there was never any pressure to be like either of them, but they sort of gave me sort of guides as to what they did and sort of why they did it. And I think they kind of understood that they were going through a fairly big generational change.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have TVs when they grew up, and then it was black and white TVs, and then people were on the moon, and sort of like the technological and societal changes that they'd experienced in one generation. I think they saw that there was going to be another series of very big leaps. So there was no point sort of transposing their generation onto the next. And so sort of, it was a bit of this, bit of that, always sort of learning and making sure that you did learn. You didn't just do things for the sake of it.
It sounds like they gave you a pretty good open road to be able to explore life, which is, I think, something that our generation got to explore quite a bit. And I think that when you get to I grew up a middle class kid in a small town in West Virginia, and I personally didn't have a curfew. My brother did because he was constantly in trouble, but I didn't. So I got to explore a lot, and I would go out at night and kind of discover the night creatures in the woods and things like that. And I don't know that kids get to do that nowadays. I think there's a lot of helicoptering and hovering that goes on, and the world's different now, right? So I get that. But what this brings me back to is like, so I know that growing up, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to be a pilot because my uncle's a pilot. And my grandfather was a pilot. I wanted to be able to speak foreign languages because my dad spoke 4 or 5 that I'm aware of. Like, there was a lot of these things. And then finally in high school, I was like, I want to be a judge. I didn't know what the hell a judge did. All I knew is I wanted to be a judge because I had to go to court for a speeding ticket when I was 17. So he was very nice to me, thankfully. But so as a kid or maybe a late teenager, what did you think you were going to do? And how did that kind of steer your direction? Because like even I went to school for biology, and I left, and then I was like, I've never used that, right? And then suddenly I'm bartending, and I find distillation, and I'm like, holy crap, this is bioengineering or biochemical engineering. This has a lot to do with what I learned in school, and it has a lot to do with the art that I work with. So it's got this happy medium. So how did you find your happy medium?
I had marine biologist on the list too.
Right on. Okay. Well, I mean,
I think
you
all boys
almost have
kind of
to
do
if you're from Eastern Australia. At some point, you have to.
So I mean,
right?
it was that. It was a vet. It was, I don't know, marketing was sort of a buzzword for a bit. I wasn't quite sure. I was Yeah, I was the daydreamer, whereas my sister was very focused, and she kind of, I think she always knew what she was going to do, and she did it.
Yeah.
She did it very, very well. Um, I think sort of even at a young age, I was that jack of all, master of none. Could
Yeah.
do a little bit of everything, um, but always got instilled a great work ethic. That was the one thing. If you didn't know what you wanted to do, that was fine. But whatever you did it well. So did it to the best of
Yeah.
your abilities and did a good job, and you saw it through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sort
I
of
think.
had that. Final sort of the leaving results as you leave high school. Mine weren't great at all, and so I ended up doing agricultural economics, which is
Oh,
essentially
cool.
a double degree. It was
Okay.
an economic degree with a whole bunch of other stuff,
Hmm.
just because it was a really great medium. Sort of there was international trade and econometrics and math stats and economics and sort of a really good grounding of a lot of things. Um, Part of that was work experience, sort of paid or otherwise, on the farm, so I got to go back and do that again, to try and set me up with the best base possible.
Right on.
And then did the applications sort of for corporate things. Like I said, I knew deep down that I had to at least get the experience.
Hmm.
And British American Tobacco had like I said, a graduate program, and I think they pulled in 11 out of 1,000, and magically talked my way into that. Went for the marketing position, and sat down and ended up the final interview was with the head of tax for Asia Pacific.
Oh, wow.
He said, "Look, marketing's full. Are you interested in finance?" And I was like, "Well, this is a foot in the door. I'm going to have to learn this stuff at some point."
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Knowing that my finance skills weren't great, but for me, they moved you through the different departments, right?
Mm.
Sort of the marketing guys ended up sticking with the marketing, but sort of with finance, you did operations and marketing, and obviously sort of the finance stuff and supply chain. And so I got to see a business on a global level.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, got seconded for a wee bit up to Papua New Guinea. Um, Crocodiles on the golf course, but also learnt a bunch there. The guy who was sort of managing me told me that when you improve something, you have to improve in concentric circles. You can't just get
Oh,
better
wow.
at one aspect of your job. The whole thing has to go like that, right? Otherwise, you have a good core competency and you're good at random things. To develop, you need to develop in concentric circles. So as fun as sort of and interesting as the tropical life was, it was really hard, and it was
Yeah,
super
I can imagine.
beneficial, and thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at development in the concentric circles, and I wish that that's something that would be taught over here, maybe in high school curriculum, so that we can understand um, better how to develop. I mean, I think a lot of us go to university going, I got, and the best of us don't know what the hell we want to do still in our 40s, right?
Yeah,
But I think going to college or university with an idea of at least a growth pattern that we can finally kind of look at and use versus going in and taking an entire semester's worth of humanities when two or three of those, I may have done that before,
yeah,
where two or three of those aren't going to pertain to the degree, and
yeah,
you're just wasting time and money at that point.
yeah.
But the exploration helped me become who I am, right? And I'm
Exactly, and,
sure
and you need a bit of both.
your
And
exploration did.
as
Yeah,
you develop, like it's easy to develop the things that you like and you're good at. Like
right.
for example, with my kids, so what do we do? And we do hard things, right?
Yeah,
Because it builds that intestinal fortitude. It builds the ability to do hard things and to know the process,
yeah,
right? And if you want to improve, get better as a person, as a member of society, sort of whatever your objectives are, you do have to do the hard things,
yeah.
right? And sort of
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good message, especially right now. We've got to do the hard.
yeah.
Sometimes
And
that's
once
going to
you
be working with
once you
people
do
we don't
that,
like
when
sometimes.
a hard thing in the
Yeah,
future comes up, you can sort of fall back and go, I don't necessarily know the solution, but I know the process.
yeah,
And so the hard things become less hard,
yeah.
rather than going from 0 to 100 when something bad does happen.
Right on. Well, something good did happen. You learned quite a bit, and I'm sure there was. You're here with us now, and I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that went along, especially in this. What a wonderful position to be at in your early part of your career development, right? You've got all of these exposure elements that are coming at you and building you and setting you up for later, which brings us to kind of where you are now. So, like, what if you were to tell the flock out there, where are you in life in relation to the hospitality industry? Are you in
Mhm.
it? Are you adjacent to it? How does it affect your work? So forth.
So I would say adjacent. So to a couple steps back, did
Okay.
the corporate thing, decided not for me, and the pendulum
Hmm.
swung all the way the other way. And this was sort of for us oldies out there. This was when flying around the world with multiple stops was cheaper than flying in and out of Australia.
Oh,
So
wow.
before I left, I'd lined up to go and do some volunteer programs in Costa Rica.
Okay.
Post that, had connected with the Luxembourg Rugby Club,
All
and they
right.
said, "Well, we don't pay." And I said, "Oh, fear not, I'm not good enough to get paid." But they said, "We'll help you find a job and somewhere to live." And I went, "Fantastic, I'm in." So that was my round the world route. Um,
Okay.
so kind of very open ended. Didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, but it always had a thing about Latin America, even growing up, looking at
Mm,
the Maya and the Aztecs and the Incans and everything. So I went, well, this is the first step to that. So I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to do this," and I was like, I think I was pretty brave and made my own luck.
yeah.
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 So this was and you do have to make your own luck. Um, so yeah, hospitality adjacent in that I ran a pub in Luxembourg. Uh,
Okay.
back to Central America, post Europe. Got stuck. Got stuck in Guatemala through a series of
Mm.
misfortunate events that if anyone's interested, we can catch up over a drink about. But ended up running another bar there, and then sort
I've
of
always wondered how this link. I have a feeling I know where this is going, but I always wondered how this link happened. So
yeah.
I
So what
digress. Please keep
was in
going.
Europe? The nonprofit contacted me and said, "Will you come back? We've got more projects to run. We'd
Hmm.
love to have you on board." So I said yes. Moved from Europe back to Central America. Got stuck in Guatemala. Fell in with John Rexer, who was the owner of Cafe No Say.
Hmm.
Started working there, smuggling a bit of booze here and there. But yeah, it was that universal skill of bartending that sort of put you into sort of that social context. Luxembourg, they all have four languages. Guatemala, obviously, sort of Central America and Spanish speaking for the most part. So I'd gotten used to essentially living in countries where English was not the first language,
Hmm.
and like sort of you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I really like that. I like not knowing that today was necessarily going to be easy and that you had to work for your day. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, so I ended up there. And that was sort of hospitality back in the day. Like you had the keys, you helped do the ordering, you did the bar, you counted the money. Whereas as I evolved into sort of the brand side of things, and you know what it's like sort of being as a brand, you get to cameo behind the bar every now and again. And you go, oh,
Yeah.
this is fantastic. And then 15
Yeah.
minutes later, and you go, whoa, I'm glad I don't do this 6 nights a
Yeah.
week
It's like
anymore.
your elbows are sore within 30
Yep,
minutes. You're like, what is going on right now? Why do my feet hurt? You wake up feeling like trash in the morning. You didn't even
exactly.
drink. Kudos to those that do this every day of the week.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sort of the
Yeah.
romance about it is still there, but I'm very glad that I'm adjacent rather than sort of waist deep in it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I gotta, before we jump back into that question that I asked, I want to ask what it was like working at Cafe No Say at this point. And for those of you out there listening, Cafe No Say is essentially the origin point of Illegal Mezcal.
Yeah. So
Um, this is not a show about Illegal, but we'll probably bring it up more than once because
yeah.
it's an integral part of Steven's story.
Yeah.
But what was it like being at Cafe No Say back then?
Oh, beautiful. Truly beautiful. So for those of you that don't know, Antigua was the capital when Central America was a single country.
Hmm.
It's UNESCO listed. It has cobblestone streets. It's surrounded by volcanoes, a couple of which are active. Uh, just beautiful at the end of the valley. And there was this hole in the wall dive bar that had live music every night. Um, John had gathered this collective of amazing people, whether they were sort of transient backpackers or some of the people who lived there. We had a secondhand bookstore. We had a bar originally that you had to go through the kitchen to get to, and then we punched a hole in the wall and had a green door, which is a bit of a homage to us oldies through behind the green door. Google that if you want. And it was candlelit and smoky and beautiful, and lock-ins. A friend who used to come in, and we called them the T-Boys, and they were these young Guatemalan guys that were going to change the world, and they were teachers, and they were broke, and they would buy single cigarettes and like 2 tea bags between 6 of them, and just get free refills of hot water and pass the tea bags round. And then one of them ended up being on the that CNN World Changing People, and he got brought up to the US, and he started a nonprofit and a school and a whole thing, and that all came out of No Say, and obviously sort of some great rock and roll and late nights and fun things, but we did a lot of good things with a lot of good people, and that's obviously where Ilegal was born.
What a legacy! That's like, mezcal aside, I mean, we're still in a mezcal frenzy to a degree, in the States, but Ilegal aside, what a legacy and what an amazing impact on the community something like that has. Like,
I mean, we opened up a juice bar and a cafe. We did live music events, sort of a pillar of the community as well. Like the combo of the juice bar and the cafe and the bar was Retox Detox, and they were literally across the street from one another. But the bar's still going, still doing beautiful things. You go down there, and a lot of the faces have obviously changed, but the feeling is still the same.
That's awesome.
So it is sort of a homecoming when you go there, which is nice.
Okay. I might have to talk Stacy into doing a long weekend or something and going down. So I have yet to go to Guatemala at all.
Beautiful, beautiful country.
So you mentioned earlier that you have lived in four different continents, different countries.
Yeah. Okay, so Australia,
so Luxembourg,
Australia, Europe, North America, in
okay.
the States, and then Central America, which is sort of Central South. Yeah.
Gotcha. Did you notice, especially back then, because as you know, I travel a lot. We were on the road for about 3 years straight, and you start to notice subtle differences between, I'm not going to say styles of hospitality. I think it's ages of hospitality or eras. Like there's some countries that are kind of still in that honestly, like 96 to 2002 era. There's some countries that have graduated, which I'm not so sure is the right terminology at this point after observations of hospitality systems across the world. It's just where they're comfortable, I think. And their guests are comfortable in that, and why disrupt that kind of thing. But back then, when you were shifting through, are there any things that you saw that were culturally relevant now, or that you can look back on that were like, holy shit, that place was ahead, it was already doing stuff that we're doing now, but it might not have been on the same quote unquote level? Anything along those lines?
I mean, so like my first bar job was university, the rugby club I played for. Again, thanks to rugby and beer, I went a lot of places. And sort of
good reason to go to places.
Got behind the stick and just went, "Oh, this is for me." Gotcha. And that was blended drinks, pretty terrible shots, and lots of lager, and it was great. And the atmosphere was always fun. And granted, it was sort of the local community and the rugby boys, and everyone sort of blended really well. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was always a good time. The staff had a good time. The punters had a good time. And I've noticed that sort of around the world, whether it be like you go to the American bar at the Savoy, right? And they come out with those sort of amazing olives and the nuts. And even though it's white coats, there is still that sense of fun. Certainly not as loud, or it may not be as crazy, but it's that fun and enjoyment and enthusiasm. So yes, you can learn techniques from certain places, but it's that underlying. It's almost like a hum. You can feel it when you walk into a place. I've got to say,
exactly
like the guys at Dear Strangers. So sort of there's the EO Macau alum. They've got a new place in New York.
Oh wow!
And
I was unaware of that. Okay.
I even got them in my notes. So my homework for the podcast. Perfect. The hospitality, as soon as you walk in, I'd not seen the guys in a couple of years. It's like I'd seen them yesterday. But everybody who walked in got the same treatment. Obviously, the technical skills were fantastic, but just the warmth and generosity of self, from the bartenders to the host to the servers to everything. Obviously, practiced and learned and trained. So by the time that you walk in, it's very fluid and very natural. So I think that's where it's going to be. But then you go to France, and you know that sort of there's going to be that sort of certain French attitude, which, if you know going in, is thoroughly enjoyable.
Oh, it is, if you understand.
And you go to certain other places, and you know that you're going to have to sort of ask for the drink 4 times, and someone's going to come out and be super apologetic. And I think it's just embracing sort of the different cultures and the different service techniques, but knowing that there's that generosity and giving yourself at the same time. And yeah, so like you said, some markets and some places are doing it. Some people would say better than others. I think that's more of a technique and a knowledge thing as opposed to a hospitality thing.
Yeah.
Like sort of Sasha, obviously, sort of, he didn't rewrite the book. He just kind of formalized it a bit.
Yeah.
So that people who wanted to learn, rather than have to learn through experience, went, oh, this is an amazing cornerstone for what I want to learn or be or do. So yeah, it's that's what I sort of notice. And so long as you embrace sort of the country or the type of bar, right? Know what your expectations should be.
Yeah, I mean, don't go into a cantina in rural Mexico and expect to get a Infante. Like they're going to look at you cross-eyed.
Yeah,
enjoy
exactly.
the lager and the mezcal or tequila or Cia, whatever it is, and just enjoy it. And
exactly, and sort of
eat the damn.
Ideally, there's a temperature differential between the beer and the shot, but if they're quite close, then that's okay too. Exactly. Like I've had some great afternoons doing that sort of stuff.
It's I think it goes back to that whole argument of, I don't even know if sorry might be a debate of service versus hospitality, and what those two things mean and how we balance those in a third space, if you will.
Yeah.
Which will bring me back to the question. When you look, actually, can you give us a snippet of what you do for work?
Okay. So it was obviously sort of part of the team at Illegal. Turned into the approximately 20-year overnight success, which is pretty cool. And the roller coaster that is, because nothing's linear and nothing's easy. And then, like sports analogies, you probably learn more from the losses than the wins. So it was definitely worth it in the end. And I saw that there was a really big white space for brands trying to come to the US, and kind of figured, well, I got stuck on plenty of roundabouts and hit plenty of dead ends. I can be, and sort of a few friends sort of in the military sort of introduced me to this, to be a force multiplier, right? Like use all my experience, use my burnt fingers. Like I love that Marco Pierre White, fingers are made for burning, right? Burn them plenty of times. I'll still let you burn yours, but not to the degree, right? So you have to learn by experience. But yeah, being that force multiplier, because brands, it's never truly a catastrophic event that ends a brand. Most of the time, it's running out of time, money, sanity, get stuck on the fundraising train, whatever it may be. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And if I can help remove that, so you as a entrepreneur, a businessman, a person, have a greater chance of success, then yeah, like I like helping people. I like cool people doing cool things. And so that's kind of why I created the agency. I was fortunate enough to get connected with Tom Baker back in the day as Mr. Black was looking toward the US. So I was the first boots on the ground for him. And so essentially the 4 continents and 2 odd decades of hospitality and brand building, I create sort of custom scope of works for brands. It's certainly not a one size fits all, because spirits brands never are. And so, so we basically work out the scope of work. I don't do it for the brands. A lot of what I do is education and empowerment. So obviously show them how to do it, get it up and running, do it with them, teach them how to do it. So that when the next evolution is when they bring on their own team or it expands, they have the skill set to do it themselves. But also too, as a kind of like a personal business mentor as well. Like I know what it's like. I know the sleepless nights. I know the fear of payroll not coming through, or trying to get bills paid, or trying to get that one account that just doesn't happen, and sort of all the trials and tribulations of that. And that's not easy either. Because especially for people outside looking in, they go, Nick, man, that's so cool. You travel the world, you do this, you do that. And you go, it is epically cool. And it is so hard. Like I've had friends, and this was sort of back in the day when we were sort of proper rock and rollers, not quite the movie, but almost. Sort of friends.
Such a good movie.
Outside the industry going, oh man, I gotta come on one of these trips with you. It's like, man, I love you, and you would die. You would.
They have no idea.
Yeah, we don't. And that's sort of, I think that's an evolution of, which is a good thing. Like we didn't treat ourselves well. We were excellent at running and gunning. And a lot of great people who physically just couldn't stand up to it. It fell by the wayside, whatever it is, because it's hard what we do. Right? Even
it's hard
just
to be away from family and
nowadays,
friends that long, right? It's you're constantly on the on. You're constantly on the go. You are constantly making a first impression or a lasting impression, one of the two. And it's imperative that you're always, I'm not going to say on guard or on your toes, but aware, like being self-aware of what's going on around you and making sure that how you interact with others is genuine and is coming from a place of compassion and integrity, so that these connections that you're making, every single connection, and I don't know if many of you listening right now are aware of how your connections affect your narrative, but they are your narrative. Every person that your bubble bounces into, I don't believe in linear stuff either. It's all about these little masses that bump into each other. It's very cellular, if you will. Your network is your narrative. The people that you surround yourself with is your narrative. And it goes back to, I think, of our parents even saying, you are who you surround yourself with, and so forth. There's a lot of truth to that. You don't want to be known as a drug dealer, don't hang out with drug dealers. You don't want to be known as a guy that starts shit, then don't hang out with people that start shit.
Don't hang out with those unreliable guys. It's that combination of, and it's not quite sort of Glengarry going Ross where always be closing, but you kind of are, right? It's not a zero sum game, because there's a knock on effect, and especially depending on sort of you are your own brand, and then you're also your clients at the same time, right? And you've got to have a net positive engagement all the time, and that loops into sort of a question that you ask later, sort of what do you look at when you go into a bar? We'll get to that one.
Yeah.
And then it's also, and I put another note, it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like I think what we do now, so particularly and it's beyond that, it's sort of it's the beverage, it's the hospitality, it's the international network. It's like, I think I'm down to like 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like I've sorted dentists in Latvia, on like a 2-day turnaround. And I was like, what are you calling me for? And he went, because you know everyone. My illegal business card at the end just had fixer. Right. And so if you can be like sticky and positive, then that's a huge thing. And I like doing that. Right? It doesn't always have to be about the sale or the brand. If you can help someone on a professional or personal or whatever thing, that's kind of what we do as well. Right? And our industry is super fluid and very global, especially if you do it for a little while. Like you end up knowing people from absolutely everywhere. And so if your experience in your network can help them and their experiences in their network, then that's kind of what we do too.
Yeah, it's a lot to chew on there. And there's more questions that you just you're actually painting a picture that I think I want to get back to at the end of this, because I have a feeling this is going to sound almost therapeutic, but we'll get to that when we get to towards the end of the show, because I there's something sticking out to me that's just like, wow, it always does go back there. Let me ask you this: when you're out in the field, right? Because we run into each other in odd cities all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do very different but very similar things at the same time. I know that when I go into a bar, the first thing I'm doing, because I'm very science driven, but I'm also very artistic driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I walk into a room, I don't see the people first. I see the layout of the room first, right? I look at the traffic flow, and I look at the appointments, and I look at the color, and I listen to the sound. And Rick Rubin's latest book, there's a passage in that book, and I refer to it all the time with my partner when we're out traveling, where he says that there's music in everything, and when you sit still in the chaos, you can hear the rhythm. That's not the exact passage, but it talks about meditation in public spaces and listening for the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen for that music when I walk into a space. I try to hear how loud the service folk are talking. I try to hear how loud the bar is humming, or what's going on in the kitchen, or how the patio doors being open on a 110-degree day are affecting the people in the dining room. So these are the things I'm looking for, because it allows me to help others later when I get clients to open up restaurants, or when I'm looking at brands and how these brands relate to spaces and people. So when you walk into when you're out in the field and you walk into a space, what are some of the first things that you see when you walk into a third space?
I think you just stole my notes.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yep. Lighting, music, initial experience, all that. So, and I said sort of the hum before. It's like the vibration. How does it feel?
Yeah.
And it's not like a tactile touching things feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, lighting, mooding, sort of initial engagement, and then I obviously sort of come more from the brand and the product perspective than the actual running. And like I know how to run venues and stuff like that, but that's not my sort of forte. So it's the back bar, it's the layout of the bar, it's where the seats are, and then obviously then it's the menu and then the service from there. But then also looking, like you said, how the staff interact. Do they need to shout because the music's too loud? Sort of just that holistic experience. And again, sort of giving them a pat on the back, like the dear strangers guys. God, great. And not that I was there for hours, but the ambient lighting outside had changed whilst I was still there.
Oh wow!
Just because it was just getting darker outside, okay. So coming in through the windows, but they adjusted the lighting accordingly.
Mm.
Just to have that continuity of, and sort of, so all those little things. And then having done it for so long, sort of it's not a forced process anymore, which is good, because like I'm not out 8 nights a week like I used to be. And so that when I do go out with my wife, or I do go out with friends, it's still in the lizard brain, and you're still checking everything.
Yeah, it is.
But because it's so ingrained and sort of you just go, all right, checklist done, you are more present in that situation or that engagement, right? Like you're not going out for work. You're not going out for cocktails with the brand owner or checking something out. You're out with your friends. So you can have more of the friend experience just because you've done the other experience so many times that it's just there.
How long did it take for you to turn that off? Because even today, my partner and I will be out somewhere and we'll walk in. She knows we've been together for over 20 years. Like she knows my meet you on a cellular level at this point, right? And
Yeah.
we'll sit down. She goes, "Are you done?" And I'm like, "With what?" And I always say, "With what?" Knowing exactly have you redesigned the place? Have you picked apart everything? And can you just be with me now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna meditate for about 30 seconds and let me get here, and then we'll just be."
Yeah. I don't think it's turned off. I think it's turned down,
Okay.
but turned
Yeah.
down enough
Yeah.
that sometimes, like my wife will go, "Oh, yeah, I know," and other times, like she won't notice that I've already sort of done the checklist.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm trying to get it to where I can do the whole thing between the front door and wherever we're sitting.
yeah,
Like I'm trying really, or I'll excuse myself to go to the bathroom and do
and have a
my
quick look see.
OCD observations on the way there and get it done and peek in the kitchen real quick and go back and just
Yeah.
be again. Um, how do third spaces like a place like is Dear Strangers is
Yeah. So
cannot wait.
yeah, I mean,
How
a lot of
does a
people
place
think
like
that
that
alcohol is a
affect?
social lubricant, which it certainly
Okay,
is. I think third spaces are that social lubricant. Like
okay,
back in the day, sort of the poets and the artists and the revolutionaries, they weren't sitting around drinking bottles of rum, were they? They were drinking coffee.
Mm-mm.
Right?
Yeah, they were. They were.
Like
And somehow all the shit will
superhuman
always
amounts
tie
of
back to
coffee.
coffee. Yeah.
Right. So it's not necessarily the liquid, it is the space and creating that space. And
Mm.
that's what John Rexer did with No Say. That's what truly great bars do. Like the chicken soup at 4 o'clock and employees only. The like you can pick certain things that certain places do, and yeah, the liquid. It's a combination of the liquid, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
and now with the rise of non-alc and low ABV and THC and Delta 9 and sort of all the cool things that are coming through. It's the combination of the space and the liquid that it's. So third places are super important. They truly are. I mean, Starbucks sort of obviously did that very well back in the day
Yeah.
when your man popped over to Italy and went, all these people they're not drinking coffee at home. They go out to have a coffee, whether it's a stand-up espresso or it's a longer thing. So sort of back in the day, they saw the vision of that third base and they articulated it and they put it on paper. I think a lot of
Okay.
people were kind of doing it, whether
Mhm.
that be sort of taverns or bars or dive bars are the perfect example, right? That is that
Yeah.
third space.
What's your favorite type of third space? Do you have a favorite?
Probably dive bars, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's nice to pop on a jacket and go somewhere nice.
Yeah.
But I like I sort of coffee shops to a certain degree, but dive bars just because of the conversation that comes out. It's almost like sort of the conversation, and this is not derogatory at all. The conversation in a 3 Michelin star restaurant is very, very different to a dive bar, right? Because dive bars you can talk about anything, and
Yeah.
you get anybody can go there, right? It is that beautiful combination of highbrow and no brow,
Yeah.
right?
It's super
Where
important to communities as
highbrow
well.
does not get the middle or the no brow. So I
Yeah.
just think it's a beautiful melting pot with things like
Yeah.
that.
And it's always fun to walk in and see who you're going to see in a dive bar, right? It's like it can be the guy that just got done with that Michelin dinner and didn't want, or that couple that just got done with that Michelin dinner and didn't want to go home yet and decided to go to their local dive and shoot pool. And I think for me, like a dive that has 2 or 3 pool tables are probably my jam, or
Yep.
even pool halls. I really, really like pool halls. But yeah, where I live now, I live essentially behind a neighborhood bar. Um, it's adjacent to this building, and it's on the next lot, but it's like the bar's at the other end of the lot, and it's amazing because you see, depending on what time of day you're in there, is who you see and what conversations are happening,
Yeah.
right? So like on a Saturday or on a Monday or a Tuesday, it's going to be different depending on the type of day. Like there might be families in there on a Saturday afternoon, where on a Monday or Tuesday afternoon, it's all of the we'll say folks that have their AARP cards, that type of crowd.
Yep.
And even the political conversations that you'll hear in the background. I don't know about you, but I can't turn my bartending ears off.
No.
Like they won't go away. Like, and I don't really want them to go away because it lets me experience the world differently. For those of you watching, I've never talked about this on air before. Bartender ears. When you're bartending, you have your back facing the crowd every now and again. When you're in your till or you're pulling bottles, you have to be aware of what's going on behind you. And fortunately / unfortunately, for those of us that worked in bars for a really long time, you develop a skill where you can hear the entirety of the bar behind you. So you can turn around and inject yourself in a conversation immediately. That doesn't go away. Yep. Once you have that skill, it doesn't go away. You might be able to turn it down.
And so for people listening, it's not always the actual words and the verbiage. It's also the intonation and the tone.
Yeah.
Right. Someone might be outside of your periphery, and if you can hear the volume and the animosity coming up, you don't necessarily know what you're saying, but you know what is happening over there. So you pay extra attention.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild skill set to build. But, you go into these spaces at like 2 p.m. and you're hearing one conversation. You come back at 5:30 or 6, you're hearing a different conversation. And then once the local IPA club comes in and sits down and starts sucking down 7.5%, 8% Imperial IPAs, it's a whole different conversation. Yeah. And I love the third space for that because they're remaining agnostic, right? They're there to provide this space for people to come, people to eat, people to commune, people to celebrate each other, maybe just for solace and to be able to be in your own head for a bit. And I really love how a third space does that. And I do love how it has evolved from these cafes or coffee houses or even something different way back in like the Turkish, Armenian, Ethiopian, Yemenis days of coffee, ceremonial to social consumption differences.
Yep.
I really do love how places have evolved, but honestly, they're kind of still the same at their root. And a lot of the brands that we see come into these spaces, whether it be non-alcoholic or coffee or tea or ayran at the cafes in Istanbul, it all goes back to that premise of having a space to commune and share ideas or share solace or share celebration. It's all about that sharing spirit. And I think if brands paid a little more attention to the intent of third space, they'd do a lot better, especially in their marketing side.
Yeah. Even just from a consumption and thus probability sort of consumption and profitability perspective.
Yeah.
A person drinking alone is not going to drink as much as someone who is with others in a communal space where they're engaging and talking and being social and sort of having, not that it's sort of a competition to have many drinks, but having a second or having a third drink. Sort of if you break it down into the volumes of how much people drink, sort of in those community settings, whether it be over a meal or meeting or watching a sporting event these days, things like that. It is a more profitable model, right? So you don't have to reinvent the occasion because there are plenty of occasions. You just got to find the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. And I think it's something maybe operators should be paying a little more attention to right now.
Yeah.
The world is changing, folks. You might have to adapt your models at this point. And that's not a bad thing. Keep it pure, keep it what it is, but still allow for a Generation Z to come in and feel welcome. Because they don't know what the hell they're doing. They have no idea how to interact in these spaces. They were shut out of them for 4 or 5 years.
But the thing is, we're not going backwards. We're not hearkening back to the oldie taverns or whatever it may be. So whatever's coming is going to be new.
Yeah.
Right? There's probably going to be homage to certain things, and obviously things that work well will continue. But there will be changes.
How does your brand, the Stephen Myers brand, fit into those new spaces?
I think it's a combination of me being able to, and you mentioned this before, sort of being in the trenches, and sort of I do try and keep fairly up to speed as to what's going on and who's doing things well, and sort of the changes on the ground level, but also up on the 30,000 foot level. And like whenever there's a new category that starts to come up, all the old categories turn into penny penny and the sky is falling. And it's happened over and over again. It's not like people will drop one entire category, be it beer, wine, spirits, for non-alc or sort of CBD or adaptogen beverages, right? There's just more to choose from. There always has been and there always will be. And so brands just need to be aware of that. And it loops back into, say you, so I have a position with Palante Rum, which is an absolutely gorgeous rum out of Chiapas in Mexico. Young Latin founders. It's a Cuban style rum. Branding is great. Packaging is better. People are even better than that. And they are sort of very forward looking and sort of they know what's going on. And so sort of being involved with them helps me bring a different perspective. So just sort of keeping in touch with things like that. And just being open, right? There's always, don't be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
You're in the wrong room.
Get in a room with people that are a lot smarter than you, because people are going to learn from you if you're the smartest guy in the room, but you're not learning shit. And if you succeed all the time, you're really not learning shit. You need to be able to hit the bumps in the road on occasion. When you're looking to forecast your work, let's say, let me get this from you first. I plan my work about 3 or 4 months out, right? So I know right now that I've got a certain number of clients and it's going to take me X amount of weeks to get this work done. So I can kind of forecast a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. One of my clients is a restaurant, so it might, that one, I'm going to push, I'm adding on an extra 5 weeks to that particular project, because that's usually where we are. Because of the way things are changing, are you adapting your forecasting at the same time, or is it because a lot of what you're doing is more brand related? Are you able to kind of stick to the same type of forecasting? Like, what type of professional knobs do you have to tweak to stay, I'm not going to say relevant, but at least in that, because you are kind of that vehicle that kind of moves adjacent to, and you're able to insert yourself due to really keen observation. Do you have to tweak the knobs as much?
You do a little bit. I mean, sort of a lot of that is sort of building out sort of that classic trademark calendar, right? You know, sort of the OND is obviously mad. You know, sort of where it dips in summer and where it doesn't. And so for like a lot of the brands I work with are fairly new and fairly young. And so you say, guys, your year is not divisible by 12. Right. January's not going to be great if you're in the Northeast. It's cold. Everyone's broke after Christmas. And New Year's resolutions are the thing. It gets colder in February. So this is sort of the consumption cycles and the landscape. So a lot of it is managing expectations. As we come into tariffs and everything else that's going on, you've got to be flexible. I think so what I've started to do now is, and I don't like putting up hard numbers, because I mean, brands should hold you to that, right? So I generally don't do that, but sort of give them a bandwidth and ideally look at what they've done previously. And then you say, okay, is the team bigger? Is the budget bigger? Okay, then this is a reasonable expectation. I'm not saying sort of don't quote me on that, but like let's be flexible and let's be sort of realistic. And so I just work on it that way. Rather than, again, because otherwise it becomes that zero-sum game. Well, Steve said this, or you can't do that. The other guys, I'm in this with you. I really do get vested interest in the brands that I work with. Like I'm working with Sophie Deckelbeck with Calle 23, who's been brilliant for the last 20 years. She's awesome.
She's one of my favorite
amazing.
people.
And sort of people go, oh, I forgot about it. Like she's always had sort of the industry's hearts, and I'm just here to get the minds back.
Yeah.
And so we sort of work on what was sold last year. Okay, this is how we change it a little bit now that we've got a few more resources. Because like we don't have quarterly investor calls, and we don't have to post. We don't have to be Pernod and post our earnings, or Diageo and post our earnings, or be Bacardi and just wiggle our finger and go, no, we won't tell you. So I just try and be as transparent and as flexible as possible.
Right on.
Because who knows? Maybe you hit a 3-run homer, right? And then that changes everything.
Yeah. Branding is an interesting thing right now. And you mentioned the tariffs and how those, like I've got friends that have bought into a couple of distilleries in Mexico at this point, and they've got some really cool tequilas and mezcals coming across the border, but they can't get it across the border right now, right?
Yep.
So it's just kind of sitting there, and it affects everyone on every level, from the farmers all the way up to the salespeople.
Oh, totally. I mean, sort of when COVID came through, I had a bunch of products at the time sitting off Manhattan Beach in California.
Oh man!
And the owners went, "Oh, can you do it?" And I said, "Look, we can pop down to the beach with some binoculars, and I'll show you the ship. And unless you want me to swim out there and get it, we just got to wait." And then and this is sort of showing that sort of nothing is ever in a straight line. Got it into the port, and sort of the owners went, "Okay, so now we go." And I said, "Well, it's like the third phase of COVID, so all the truck drivers have got it. So there's minimal. So yes, it has landed, but it's not going from the docks to the warehouse. So sort of the timeline's got even longer." And that's just I'm a big proponent of narrow and deep. That's how you build brands. That's how you build volume. Otherwise, you get very good at selling into your first sale, and 10 cases to 10 accounts each is better than 1 case to 100 accounts.
Yeah.
Right. So this is sort of the philosophy, with lots of communication. Yep.
I don't think investors fully, and maybe this is something that I should start talking to some of my clients about, is that I don't think investors fully get the logistics part of it. Like when it hits land, like that's great, but then it has to clear customs, and it has to clear FDA, then it has to clear whatever ATF is turned into at this point, and TTB and all these other different vehicles before it even gets into a warehouse. And then if you're in a control state, there's a whole nother level of crap. And if you're in Texas, good luck. And I don't think that investors really understand that. I had a guy approach me about doing a distillery. And I was like, that's amazing. How much do you have to, like, what do we look like? He told me what he wanted. I told him what I thought. And he was like, well, how much do I need? And I was like, what you've proposed plus about another third to maybe even 2/3. And he was like, what? And I was like, do you want this to be something that's really hard and uphill the whole way? Or do you want me to be able to walk into bars, restaurants, and other third places and be able to actually move the product?
Yeah.
Because those are two different things, and one of them requires another third to 2/3 of funding. And he backed out of the deal immediately. So I'm hoping I saved his family some money at some point in there.
Yeah. I mean, like that's part of what I do. Like you don't have to look at America. It's not one single homogenous market, right? It's 50 states, which is essentially 50 different countries. New York's worth like 3 markets. Cali's worth 3. Florida's worth at least 3. Texas 2, maybe 3. And how do you need an elephant? One bite at a time. Right? You don't have to be everywhere all at once. I mean, unless you've got an infinite checkbook. But again, that's not how you build brands. But just sort of to loop back to that narrow and deep in communications, there's been times with brands where I've not communicated enough, and it's not worked. And sort of when you do, and I'm pretty decent at sort of some brutal self-assessments, and like it's never I was good, it was them. Like you sit down and went, oh, come on, it's like, come on, man, you know better than that. Right. So sort of communications is a big one. Like more is always better than less. As a consultant, as a partner, with brands or sort of whatever it may be. So that's a takeaway for the listeners, right? If
I
you
think that's probably
communicate
the
too much, you're
biggest
going to go,
takeaway
enough.
from
We're okay. I don't sort of find the boundary. Don't come up short all the time.
Yeah. That's actually, you know what? Let's end on that, because I think that's probably the most important message of the whole podcast of this episode has been. There's tons of important messages in here, but I think, that the narrow and deep, and making sure that you understand that enough point, even looking at the sunk cost fallacy models, and making sure that you're staying where you should be
Yeah.
in a very critical word. But the observation I've made through this whole thing, and it's all tying back. Your parents came from farms. It all ties back to that, because you're leading with integrity. You're doing things with purpose. You're doing things with kindness, and you've got a work ethic that's next to none. And all of that is rooted in agricultural and farming. And I
I agree.
love that type of legacy is being pulled forward. And I'm 100% sure. I haven't met your family yet, but I am 100% sure that you're doing the same thing with your kids. And because I know you that well. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. Is there anything coming up that you want the flock out there to know about, that you're working on? Anything that they should be staying tuned to? Is there any type of advice that you want to give the folks listening at this point?
Advice: be generous with your help, because everyone says, "Oh, you put it out there and it comes back." It truly does, right? Sort of the moral arc of the universe is long, and so is dealing with people, right? You can do good things, and especially given what we do, like the number of times I have been in a random country and someone's gone, "Oh, so and so, this, and so you're that guy," and you go, "Yeah, 15 years ago, I was." Yes, right. Doing good things. It's easy. It's the right thing to do. A brilliant example was Dan Singer, and this was
I love Dan
years
Singer.
ago.
Such a good
Called
dude.
me
I got to get him on
out
here.
of the blue, and he said, "You came up in conversation earlier this morning, and rather than do a text or an email, I wanted to call you." And that's what I do. And I went, and it made my day. It made my week. And I went, that is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
It's all about relationships and being good people. And so now I do that a lot. Like if there's something you go, you know what, I will call Nick. I'll call him now because he came up, and this is a good thing. And it's nice, right? It makes you feel good, because then sort of it strengthens those bonds. And then sort of from a work perspective, I've built out, so I only take on so many clients because there's only so much bandwidth, and I do like a great job with them, and sort of, like I said, take a very, very vested interest in it. So I'm also building out a package that has about 15 modules with everything that we would do over time. And it's in a pack, and you sort of there's a day session where I teach you how to use it, and we personalize it to a certain degree, and then you guys retain all that, and then use it for that brand, any future brands, whatever that may be. But the last module is bolt-on services. So sort of things that like Ryan Malkin with Ryan Malkin's Law. Right? I know most of the legal stuff, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not signing anything for you. But if you need legal counsel, he's your man. For example, Danielle Eddy is amazing at brand auditing. Yeah. And so I have this list of people who are very good at what they do. So if you need additional services, there's the intro.
Right on.
That's wrapped up and ready to go. And it's as much as, like I said, sort of the education and the empowerment, and they can sort of take it, and cool people can do cool things. That's the plan.
That's what all this is about. And we talked about that before the show. Cool people doing cool things. I'll list out my favorite podcast or something on the Instagram page. Where can people find you, Stephen?
Yeah, it's a quick podcast. Founders. Guy reads books.
I love that.
It gives you the crib sheets. Fantastic. Thoroughly enjoy it. You can learn lots. Sort of from a business perspective, obviously some of the great businessmen were terrible partners and terrible parents. So you pick and choose what you want to take away from it.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's a really good one.
Yeah. My favorite for business, Founders is up there. I really like Chris Maffeo's. I think he makes a lot of really good points in his. It's one of the podcasts I go back and listen to every now and again. And you know, all podcasts, as you said, you're going to take what you need, pick and choose what you need out of every episode. But Chris has a pretty solid, from the ground up kind of perspective that
I do enjoy his. Who else is pretty good, sort of work wise? Just grab my phone now. Acquired, if you want to go well deep.
Oh, I haven't listened to that one yet.
Sort of like 3-hour ones, like sort of the creation of Sony.
Podcasts.
Philip Duff's most recent one with Dolph Lundgren. That was fun.
What? Philip and Dolph?
Yeah, they're making a vodka together. High Performance is also a good one.
Okay.
A lot of sort of sporting guys and some business ones, but it's sort of the personal and the professional journey with a lot of people too. Showing sort of the and being an entrepreneur is, I mean, everyone is one these days, right?
Yeah.
But it's not easy, and it is not for everyone.
No, you're going to fail more times than you succeed, and you got to be comfortable with that. Well, I do thank you for coming on and sharing all of these insights with folks and telling your story. What an amazing story, and what amount of things that you get to do for people around the world, and help build families, because brands aren't just about the brand, folks. Brands encompass families, and families build these brands. From the workers to the founders to the salespeople, there are families involved, and he's helping dozens of families around the world doing that. Where can people find you, Stephen?
DynamicBeverageConsultants.com, or just Stephen at DynamicBeverage.com is the email. And then harkening back to the old days, Steve is illegal on Instagram.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for listening out there, folks. We will be back again next week, where I will have season 2, episode 3. You can catch us every Tuesday with a new episode, unless I decide to take the week off, because you know what? Life comes first and then work. I'm all about that life-work balance, not that work-life balance. Nice. Folks, thank you for tuning in to TaleFeather. I'm Nick Crutchfield. He's Stephen Myers. We'll see you next time.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate.
Thank you.